I still remember the smell of cinnamon and pine when my life cracked open. It was Christmas Day. The turkey was in the oven. Our son Jake had strung lights across the living room mantel the night before, the same way we'd done it every year since he was 8. I was setting out dessert plates when I heard the front door open. I turned, expecting Jake and his girlfriend Marie. Instead, my husband walked in with a girl who couldn't have been older than 25. She had that luminous skin people get when they haven't lived long enough to carry regret. Her hair fell in perfect waves. She wore a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my winter coat. And she was holding Michael's hand. My husband, my Michael, didn't even look embarrassed. "Rebecca," he said, using that boardroom voice I'd learned to hate. "This is Amanda. We need to talk." I stood there holding a stack of plates like an idiot. The turkey timer went off in the kitchen, shrill and insistent. "Talk," I repeated. "I want a divorce." The plates slipped from my hands. They hit the hardwood floor and shattered into a dozen pieces, scattering across the room we'd refinished together 15 years ago. I'd spent weeks on my knees sanding those boards while he worked late at the office. Amanda flinched at the sound. Michael didn't. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," he continued. "I'll need you and Jake out of the house by the end of January. This is my property. My name is on the deed." I couldn't breathe. "Your property?" "Michael, I've spent 23 years making it a home, yes. I appreciate that." His tone was pleasant, almost kind, the way you'd thank a housekeeper. "But legally, it's mine. Amanda and I are starting fresh, and we'd prefer to do it here." Amanda shifted her weight, her designer boots clicking against my floor. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad, what the hell?" Jake stood in the doorway, Marie behind him. His face had gone white with rage. Michael sighed like Jake was being unreasonable. "Son, your mother and I have been unhappy for years. Surely you've noticed." "I've noticed you turning into a vain, selfish bastard," Jake shot back. "Does that count? Watch your tone. Or what? You'll kick me out too?" Jake laughed bitterly. "I'm already planning to leave. But Mom, you're really doing this to Mom? On Christmas?" Michael straightened his tie, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was preparing to win an argument. "I'm being honest. I've met someone who makes me happy. Someone who appreciates what I've accomplished." I found my voice then, though it came out broken. "And what exactly have I been doing all these years, Michael? While you climbed your corporate ladder, who raised our son? Who kept this house running? Who gave up her career, her painting, her life so you could work 80-hour weeks? I never asked you to give up anything." That was when something inside me snapped. "You never had to ask. I loved you. I thought we were building something together." I looked at Amanda, who was staring at the broken plates like they were the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. "How long?" "8 months, Michael said. 8 months, while I was planning our anniversary dinner, while I was helping Jake apply to graduate schools, while I was repainting the guest room because Michael mentioned his mother might visit. "Get out," I whispered. "Rebecca, get out of my house." Michael's expression hardened. "As I said, it's actually my—" Jake stepped between us. "Dad, leave. Before I do something we'll both regret." For a moment I thought Michael might argue, but something in Jake's stance made him reconsider. He took Amanda's hand and walked toward the door, then paused. "I'll have my lawyer send the papers. I'm being generous with the settlement considering the circumstances. You should be grateful." Then they were gone, and I was standing in the ruins of Christmas dinner while the smoke detector started wailing because I'd forgotten about the turkey. That night, Jake and Marie stayed with me. Marie cleaned up the shattered plates while Jake dealt with the cremated bird. I sat on the couch, wrapped in the afghan my mother had crocheted, trying to understand how 23 years could end in 15 minutes. "Mom," Jake sat beside me, his hand covering mine. "We're going to get through this." "Your father's right," I said dully. "This is his house. Everything here, he paid for it. Because you made it possible for him to earn that money." "The law doesn't see it that way." "Then screw the law." His voice was fierce. "You're not going to crumble. You hear me? You're going to show him exactly what he's throwing away." I wanted to believe him. But when I looked in the mirror that night, I saw a 49-year-old woman with grey-streaked hair and crow's feet, wearing a cardigan I'd owned for a decade. I saw someone who'd been erased year by year until there was nothing left but the functions she performed. Wife, mother, housekeeper, cook. When had I stopped being Rebecca? I used to have dreams once before Michael. God, that sounds pathetic, doesn't it? Like some tragic movie where the woman loses herself in a man. But it wasn't like that at first. When we met, I was 26 and working as a graphic designer for a mid-sized firm. I painted in my spare time, abstract pieces full of colour and movement. My apartment walls were covered with canvases. My friends called me passionate, vibrant, alive. Michael was 30, charming and ambitious in a way that felt exciting rather than threatening. He loved my artwork. He'd stand in front of my paintings for minutes, analysing every brushstroke, asking me to explain what I felt when I created them. "You see the world differently," he told me once. "It's beautiful." We got married 6 months later. I was pregnant within a year. "You don't have to quit your job," Michael said when Jake was born. But the daycare costs were astronomical, and someone needed to be home with the baby. Michael's career was taking off. He'd just made junior partner. It made sense for me to step back. Just for a few years, I told myself, just until Jake's in school. But by the time Jake started kindergarten, Michael was travelling constantly. Someone needed to manage the house, handle the bills, be present for our son. My painting supplies gathered dust in the garage. My design portfolio grew outdated. "You could go back to work now," Marie suggested once, years later, when she and Jake first started dating. "Jake's in college. You have time." But I'd been out of the field for too long. My skills were obsolete, and Michael needed me to host dinner parties for his colleagues, to organise charity events that made him look good, to be the perfect executive's wife. I didn't mind sacrificing, I really didn't, until I realised I was the only one sacrificing. Michael changed when he made director. Suddenly, the man who'd loved my paintings started making comments about my appearance. "You should join that gym the partners' wives use. Amanda's sister goes there. She looks fantastic." Wait, Amanda. That's when I should have known. When he started mentioning her name in casual conversation, too often with too much interest in her family, her hobbies, her goddamn gym routine. "You're being paranoid," he said when I questioned it. "She's just a junior associate. I'm mentoring her." Right. Mentoring her straight into our marriage bed. Jake noticed before I did. "Dad's different," he said last Thanksgiving. "He's obsessed with how things look. Have you seen his new car?" The Porsche. Candy apple red, midlife crisis on wheels. "He's worked hard," I defended him out of habit. "He's earned some luxuries." But it wasn't just the car. It was the expensive suits, the hair plugs, the sudden interest in expensive restaurants and exclusive clubs. Michael was 51 years old and acting like he needed to prove something to the world. Or to himself. When I found the text on his phone, accidentally I swear I was just looking for a grocery list he'd typed, I confronted him immediately. "Michael." "Who's Amanda?" "I told you she works for the firm." "These messages don't sound like mentorship." His face went cold. "Are you going through my phone now?" "That's low, Rebecca." "You're deflecting." "I'm establishing boundaries. My work relationships are my business." I should have pushed harder, should have demanded answers. But I was so tired of fighting and part of me didn't want to know the truth. So I let it slide. Right up until Christmas Day, when the truth walked through my door wearing cashmere and holding my husband's hand. The divorce was quick and brutal. Michael's lawyer was a shark in an Armani suit who made it clear that while I'd spent 23 years building a home, I had no legal claim to much of anything. The house was in Michael's name. His salary had paid for everything. Massachusetts law entitled me to some of his assets, but his lawyer was already working to minimize that. "Take the settlement," my lawyer advised. You'll get enough to rent a decent apartment and live modestly for a few years. If you fight, you'll spend it all on legal fees. Jake was furious. This isn't fair. She gave up everything for him. Life's not fair, kid, my lawyer said, not unkindly. I took the settlement. I couldn't afford to fight. By February, Jake and I were living in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in Somerville. Marie had moved in too, insisting she wanted to help. The three of us shared meals at a tiny kitchen table, and at night I'd lie awake listening to the neighbours argue through the thin walls. I cried every night for the first month. Silent, hopeless tears that soaked my pillow. I felt worthless, used up, discarded like an old appliance that had stopped working properly. "Mom, you have to stop this," Jake said one morning when he caught me staring at nothing, still in my bathrobe at 2 in the afternoon. "Stop what?" "Disappearing." His eyes were fierce. "You're fading. I can see it happening. Marie can see it. You need to fight." "I'm tired, Jake." "Then let us help you get your strength back." Marie was the one who saved me, really. She was a social worker with a gift for connecting people to resources. One evening, she came home with a stack of flyers. "There's a community centre near here that runs programs for adults over 40, she said. "Art classes, book clubs, hiking groups. You should try one." "I don't know." "Mum," Jake set down his coffee. "Just try. For me." So I went. Mostly because I didn't have the energy to argue. The first session was a book discussion group, 10 women around my age sitting in a circle talking about a novel I hadn't read. I felt awkward and out of place, but when they asked me to share my thoughts, something unexpected happened. I started talking about the protagonist's journey of self-discovery, and suddenly I was analysing themes and character development like I used to do in college. The words came easily. The women listened. One of them smiled and said, "You should lead next month's discussion." For the first time in months, I didn't feel dead inside. The next week, I tried a painting class. The instructor was a woman named Diane, probably mid-60s with silver hair and paint-stained fingers. She set up easels in a sun-filled room and told us to paint whatever we felt. "Don't think," she said. "Just let it flow." I picked up a brush for the first time in over 20 years. At first, my hand shook. I couldn't remember how to mix colours, how to judge perspective. But then muscle memory took over, and suddenly I was painting the way I used to, instinctively, emotionally, without overthinking. I painted rage. I painted grief. I painted the moment Michael walked through the door with Amanda, the Christmas lights reflecting in her perfect hair. I painted the sound of plates shattering. I painted 23 years of slow erasure. When I finally stepped back, the canvas was a chaotic storm of reds and blacks and broken gold. It was the most honest thing I'd created in my entire life. "Rebecca," Diane stood beside me, staring at the painting. "This is extraordinary. It's just feelings. It's art, real art. How long have you been painting?" "I haven't. Not in years." She looked at me with something like awe. "You have a gift. Please tell me you're going to keep coming to these classes." I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. For the first time since Christmas, I felt something other than pain. I felt alive. I painted every day after that. The apartment was too small for a proper studio, so I set up in a corner of the living room. Jake and Marie learned to navigate around drying canvases propped against the walls. I painted memories, emotions, the architecture of grief. I painted my old dreams and new possibilities. Every stroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost. "Mum, these are incredible," Jake said one evening, studying a piece I'd finished that afternoon. "Seriously, you should show these somewhere." "They're just therapy." "They're more than that," Marie agreed. "Jake's right. These deserve to be seen." I dismissed the idea, but a few weeks later Diane mentioned that a local gallery was holding a competition for emerging artists. "You should enter," she said. "I'm 49. I'm hardly emerging." "You're emerging from a cocoon, Rebecca. That counts." I wasn't planning to submit anything. But Jake, without telling me, photographed my Christmas painting, the chaotic storm piece, and sent it to the competition. I only found out when I received an email congratulating me on winning first place. And the opening reception was terrifying. I stood in the gallery wearing a dress Marie had helped me pick out, surrounded by people who wanted to talk about my work. My painting hung on the main wall with a little placard. Shattered, by Rebecca Chen. First place emerging artists. It's so raw, a woman told me. You can feel the emotion pouring off the canvas. A man asked if I had representation. Someone else wanted to commission a piece for their office. I felt like an imposter, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Jake and Marie stood nearby, beaming like proud parents. Diane introduced me to gallery owners and art collectors. By the end of the night, I had 3 exhibition offers and 5 commission requests. This is just the beginning, Diane said. She was right. Over the next 6 months, my life transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. I painted constantly. Galleries started showing my work. I sold pieces for amounts that seemed impossible. The local arts magazine did a feature on me, the artist who bloomed at 50. I used the money to rent a better apartment with a dedicated studio space. I hired my own lawyer to renegotiate some of the divorce settlement terms. I started teaching painting workshops at the community centre. I made friends, real friends, not just the wives of Michael's colleagues who'd stopped calling the moment we separated. I joined Marie's hiking group. I went to concerts. I laughed until my stomach hurt. I cut my grey-streaked hair into a short, modern style. I bought clothes that made me feel confident instead of invisible. I started introducing myself as an artist instead of as someone's ex-wife. One evening, Jake pulled me aside. "Mom, you're glowing, you know that?" "I'm happy," I said, surprised by how true it was. "I'm actually genuinely happy." "Good, because you deserve it," he paused. "Dad's been asking about you." My stomach clenched. "What does he want?" "I don't know. He keeps calling." I haven't answered. I nodded slowly. Part of me had been expecting this. Michael showed up at my apartment on a rainy Tuesday evening. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight, the unhealthy kind that comes from stress. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. He looked older, tired, diminished. "Rebecca." His voice was hoarse. "Can we talk?" I considered closing the door in his face, but curiosity won out. "5 minutes," I said. He stepped inside, taking in the canvases stacked against the walls, the paint-splattered drop cloth, the life I'd built without him. "You're painting again," he said. "Yes. Jake told me you won some award, that you're selling your work. Is that what you came here to discuss? My career?" He flinched. I came to apologize. I waited. "Amanda left me," he said. 3 months ago. There was someone else. Someone younger, wealthier. She took a lot of money and disappeared. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a hollow sort of detachment. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Not for him, but for the general sadness of the situation. "I made a mistake, Rebecca, a huge mistake. I threw away everything that mattered for someone who never loved me. I see that now." "Good. I'm glad you understand. Can we—" He took a breath. "Is there any chance we could try again? Start over?" And there it was, the moment I'd imagined 1,000 times during those dark February nights. Michael, broken and repentant, begging for forgiveness. I'd fantasized about this conversation. In my fantasies, I either screamed at him or took him back, depending on how angry or lonely I felt. But standing here now, looking at this man I'd once loved, I felt only a profound sense of closure. "No," I said quietly. "Rebecca, please." The woman who would have taken you back died on Christmas Day, Michael. You killed her when you walked through that door with Amanda. I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me. You erased me. You made me feel worthless and invisible. You threw away 23 years like they meant nothing. I met his eyes. But you know what? You did me a favor. He stared at me, confused. I would have stayed forever, I continued. I would have kept shrinking myself, giving up pieces of who I was, trying to be whatever you needed. I would have wasted the rest of my life being your accessory. I gestured at the paintings surrounding us. You set me free. You forced me to remember who I was before I became your wife. And I'm grateful for that. You don't mean that. I absolutely do. I walked to the door and opened it. I hope you find what you're looking for, Michael. I really do. But it's not with me. Not anymore. He stood there for a long moment, then nodded slowly. As he walked past me, he paused. For what it's worth, he said, your paintings are beautiful. You're incredibly talented. I know, I said, and I closed the door. Jake took me out for dinner that night to celebrate. Celebrate what? I asked. Your freedom, your complete and total freedom. We went to a small Italian restaurant, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. Marie joined us and the three of us laughed and talked for hours. Mom, Jake said as we were leaving, I'm proud of you. You know that? I'm proud of me too, I said. And I was. For the first time in my life, I was proud of myself, not for what I'd done for someone else, but for what I'd built for myself. The year after that terrible Christmas, I had my first solo exhibition. The gallery was packed. Diane had invited everyone she knew. Jake and Marie stood by the entrance, greeting people like it was their show. My paintings covered the walls, a year's worth of grief and healing and rediscovery. The centerpiece was a new work I'd finished the week before. I called it Phoenix. It showed a woman rising from ashes, her arms outstretched, her face tilted toward an unseen sun. The colors were brilliant, golds and oranges and fierce, defiant reds. Is that you? A young woman asked me. It's everyone who's had to start over, I said. Everyone who's had to rebuild from nothing. She smiled. It's inspiring. Maybe it was. I'd spent so long thinking my life was over that starting again at 49 was impossible. But here I was, surrounded by people who appreciated my work, living a life I'd created from scratch. I thought about Michael sometimes, usually with detachment. I heard through Jake that he'd been demoted at work, that he was struggling financially, that he'd started therapy. I hoped he'd find peace eventually. We'd both been trapped in that marriage, in different ways. But mostly I didn't think about him at all. I thought about my next painting, about the workshop I was teaching next week, about the hiking trip Marie and I had planned, about the fullness of my days and the quiet contentment of my nights. Starting a new life wasn't as terrifying as I'd imagined. The truth is, the hardest part was believing I had the right to start one. But once I gave myself that permission, everything else fell into place. I was Rebecca Chen, artist. Not someone's wife or mother or housekeeper, just Rebecca. Finally, fully, completely myself. And that was more than enough. Thank you, my loves, for watching until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the newest videos.